I have two brief questions I'd like to ask, if I may.
Foot Media. My name is Brendan Malone and you're watching The Daily Question. Today's question of the day: what does the new movie survey prove about Star Wars? Now, the reason I'm asking that question is because about a week or so back, the Washington Post published this interesting article about a new survey that was done where 1,000 people were asked about 18 big films that were released during the 2010s, and they were asked, of these movies, which ones do you think are important enough? Which were the best films and should be put away in a locked vault in a time capsule to be shown to future generations? What are the films that are basically good and what are the ones that are not so good? What are the films that you think are like defining films of this era? And they were given 18 choices from the 2010s. Now, Star Wars: The Force Awakens came first. It received 34.8% of the ballots. So 34.8% of the people surveyed said yes, it's up there, and it beat out the competition with that result. Now, that's interesting. Even though it won, it only achieved 34.8% of the ballots. Now, I think that's hardly a resounding shout of approval from the masses that this is a great film. It couldn't even muster 50%. Now, Black Panther was only 8% behind it. Now, here's the interesting bit, though, and this is the thing that really matters. The Force Awakens only landed the pole position because of Gen Xers and baby boomers. We oldsters inflated the J.J. Abrams movie score and pressed it up into the top spot. 37% of people aged 35 to 44 listed it for their capsule. 40% of 45 to 54-year-olds did, and 35% of 55 to 64-year-olds did. And here's the thing, a whopping 42% of people over the age of 65 did. But when you look at the under 35s, things are a little bit different. Only 32% of people aged 25 to 34 put it in their capsule, while a meager 17% of people between the ages of 18 and 24 did so. Instead, the younger age groups preferred Black Panther, sort of similar type results, but they went the exact opposite way and they rejected Force Awakens in favour of Black Panther. Now, why this is interesting, it clearly indicates something that those of us who have been watching movie trends for a while already know. Marvel is winning. Marvel is definitely creating better action, fantasy, sci-fi fantasy films than what Lucasfilms is. I never thought I'd see the day where Star Wars would be sort of playing second fiddle to another franchise, but it's happened. And this sort of is an indication of that. Now, what's also interesting is that the younger ages, they don't have that sort of subjectivity, that sort of biased lens of nostalgia. So those older age groups are almost certainly looking at this list and they are thinking to themselves, oh, I remember the original trilogy and I remember where I was and I can remember the smell of the street waiting in line to get into that theatre to buy my tickets, and I remember the toys and I remember my childhood. And so they see Star Wars listed on there and they go, yeah, that's important because that's part of my childhood. The younger generations, it's just not a big deal for them. They don't have the nostalgia trap, and so they are just saying what they think about the film. And what's interesting, and this should be really troubling for Disney, is because if they want to have a future in making films, they've got to figure out a way to get into that 18 to 25-year-old market. And this survey indicates that they are well and truly on the losing end of that part of the market. Now, if you've spent so much money on this huge franchise, the whole point is so you can take it into the future and make more money off the franchise. But that doesn't look too bright based on the survey. So Marvel is winning, no surprise there. And younger people are just not buying into the film when you look at it based solely on its merits without the nostalgia goggles on. Here's the really interesting thing, though, about this survey. They also had 2 films on that list of 18 that were about the media. So The Post, which is a film starring Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks, and also Spotlight, which was that film about the sexual abuse crisis. And they're both films about journalism and journalists. Now, here's the interesting thing. Basically, they finished in the last 2 spots, those 2 films did, and neither of those films was mentioned on more than 8% of ballots. Both of those films, despite the fact that ordinary everyday people aren't even rating those films, both of those films have been highly rated by the establishment. They have been praised by critics and they have been praised by the Academy. At the 2018 Academy Awards, for example, The Post was nominated for Best Picture and Best Actress, and Spotlight had 6 nominations at the 2016 awards, and it won Best Picture and Best Screenplay. So these are films that are highly lauded by the establishment, yet your average, ordinary moviegoer is saying, yeah, they ain't that good. And to be fair, like, I haven't seen The Post yet. I am planning to watch it, but I've seen Spotlight. And Spotlight, it's a technically proficient film, but I never ever thought Spotlight was Best Picture quality. I never ever thought it was at that level. This is a film which, sort of from perhaps a journeyman filmmaking perspective, you could say it's well acted, it's well crafted, it's sort of well put together. But it's not a film that you look at and you go, wow, that was amazing. Wow, there was something astounding about that. Wow, that film was really important. Wow, that's got to go on my collection. I'm going to watch that over and over again. It's just not that type of film. So the fact that it won Best Picture, look, I never really looked at it and thought, yeah, that is Best Picture material. Interestingly, as I said, the survey tends to sort of bear out what I had thought, that in actual fact for the ordinary hoi polloi, you and I, these films are not that interesting, and it shows how perhaps out of touch the establishment and critics can actually be about films. As per usual, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please let me know what you think in the comments section below. And if you like the content I'm creating and you'd like to see more of it, then please support me on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. There's a link in the description below and a link on screen at the end of this video. That's right, I can hear my theme music too. I'll see you tomorrow on The Daily Question.